Well, hello there, YouTube! It's been a minute since we dropped a new video. I recently attended Final Fantasy Fan Fest in Las Vegas and saw the Dawntrail teaser, and I can't begin to tell you how hyped and excited I am. As soon as I saw the Mamulja, I knew we were going to the New World, and I couldn't be happier. My own personal Warrior of Light is from there, so it's really awesome to be able to have her go home after 10 years. I'm also very excited for... Wait, what was that? Oh no. No! No! This was so weird for me. Let me explain. My grandmother on my mom's side was Native American, but not the North American type like most people are familiar with. She was Quechuan. Since she raised me, I grew up around all this stuff, and it just seemed kind of a silly thing that I packed away for what assumed would be forever. Until Yoshi P and Ban Ryota decided to plunk Quechuan culture in the middle of my favorite game. Let me emphasize, I'm not offended, but it did make me uncomfortable. Not because I'm worried about how it's being represented. It's just very strange to see something I've kind of not really paid attention to for most of my adult life suddenly dragged into the light in front of millions of people and celebrated. I suspected during the trailer, but it wasn't until the keynote when they started dropping names like Urko Pacha and talking about the Pelu Pelu, which I'm aware from Final Fantasy X, but not actually named until Final Fantasy Mobius, that it really drove home where they were going with this. During Shadowbringers, there was Tupac Amaru in the Hero's Gauntlet, which was a cute reference to Tupac Amaru, the last emperor of the Inca people. It didn't really fit with the Mesoamerican culture of Ronca, but I thought it was a cute insert. If you've watched Lorelines for any amount of time, you'll know that I very much like to focus on the real-world things that are incorporated into the game. I feel like having an understanding of that foundation makes it easier to see where we are going. This is obviously not a 100% accurate way to speculate, as we know that 14 is a fantasy game and not reality, where the mystical powers of sadness can genocide countless of species and magical plot device energy can do whatever we need it to, just because. Just give it some ether, it'll be fine. It still obeys the laws of thermodynamics. So let's take a look at what we might expect from Dawntrail. As I mentioned, Urko, or Urku Pacha, is Quechuan, which is the primary language of the Inca and is still widely spoken in the mountain regions of the Andes, where the majority of Quechuan people live. There's about 10 million people of them, with over half living within the borders of Peru. As with North American Native Americans, the Quechuan people are not one large homogeneous tribe, but for the purposes of this video, I don't see a reason to stray that far into the weeds until Dawntrail is out, and there's a lot more specific things to talk about. Strangely enough, the Pelu Pelu, which, let me add, can be spoken as Peru Peru in Japanese, since L and R are essentially the same, also live in a mountain region. Imagine that. So I'm going to talk about what I expect to see in this region. 1. An extensive road network. The Inca built an extremely impressive network of roads throughout their empire. They used these roads to carry messages and parcels between villages and cities using couriers known as chasquis. This tradition is still alive today in the villages outside of Cusco, but more something children do for tourists than any practical reason. If they beat the tour bus, you're supposed to tip them. I've never seen them lose. A Quechuan speaker is called a Runa, which, thinking on it now, reminds me of Runar. But that's pure speculation. Feel free to disregard it. It essentially means the people, so it's not particularly a special title or anything, more like saying y'all folks in the American South. It's a regional dialect that has a very specific yet very broad meaning. Seeing Urku, also, which means mountain, and Pacha, is a bit more complicated. Pacha can be translated as world, but carries a bit more meaning. Pacha is a concept that Inca used to divide the cosmos in their mythology. The world was divided into 3 Pachas: the Hana Pacha, or the world above, the Uku Pacha, or the world below, and the Kei Pacha, or this world. The worlds aren't just spatial, but includes the 4th dimension of time, so it could be described as the world at a specific moment, or simply as space-time. This doesn't mean that the translation is world mountain, however. Because Urku comes first, the context is more mountain of the world. which contains all of space-time. I would not be surprised if the Pelupelu regarded this place as sacred based on this. On Twitter, another eagle-eyed Peruvian who goes by Niam spotted Vinicuna, or Seven Rainbow Mountain, La Montaña de Siete Colores, in the far right of the artwork for Urcapacha. This is a real-life mountain in the southeast of Cusco. The mountain gets its colors from layers of mineral compositions in the ground. Sadly, Vinicuna is a relatively recent discovery for the world. The mountain is roughly 17,000 feet high and until recently was covered in glacier. As climate change has progressed, more snows and higher elevations melted, revealing the seven-colored mountain. Before the ice melted, people would carve ice from the glacier and take it to Cusco for use. There is a concept of Great Lord, or Apu, who have domain over their own mountains, and it would be similarly surprising to not encounter something similar in Urcupacha. More specifically, I expect to see some form of Malku. Malku was the spirit of the mountains in Incan mythology, and was represented by a condor. There's definitely a lot more to cover and things to go into. I can't begin to overemphasize the importance of condor imagery. It was one of three main creatures in the Inca mythology, and the condor specifically represented Hanapacha, or the world of the gods, and was the most revered of the creatures. I immediately thought of this when I saw the Pelupelu masks, and would be thrilled to see a sacred golden condor popped up somewhere in Urcupacha. I can't help but laugh that the second of the creatures, which represents the world of the living, is the puma. I feel like they were dropping some pretty big hints with the puma collaboration, as it is now potentially relevant to the game lore. To the Inca, the puma represented strength, wisdom, and intelligence, and there's also a myth that the city of Cusco was built in the shape of a puma. It is, however, impossible to confirm this within the modern-day city. Also of note is that Cusco is over 11,000 feet high, which is over 2 miles. So it's not uncommon for visitors to experience altitude sickness there. So I hope to see something similar in the game with one of the scions, by which I mean Alphino. The last of the three creatures, which represented the underworld, was the snake. It represented the infinite, known as Amaru. The snake represented wisdom. After the Spanish conquest, however, the snake became associated with death and bad luck, which explains why my grandmother always went out of her way to kill any snake that wandered into the yard. Together, these creatures are known as the Inca trilogy. Incan culture had a lot of dualism to it. Hot and cold, light and dark, which fits very neatly into the polarities of ether found in the world of Final Fantasy XIV. Similarly, the Pachas could be used to describe both the lifestream, as Ukupacha was associated with the realm of the dead and new life, and the cosmos themselves. As Hanapacha was the realm of the sky, stars, and planets, Kipacha, or this world, would often be impacted by the struggle between the world above and the world below. This would sometimes result in something called a Pachakutik, or a calamity. These calamities would impact all the Pachas and transform the entire order of the world. These could come in the form of earthquakes or hurricanes or floods, much like the calamities triggered by rejoinings in Final Fantasy XIV. During the keynote, Yoshi P mentioned that there were giants in Urcopacha. This could easily originate from Incan mythology, specifically Viracocha, or the creator of the universe, and created the sun, moon, stars, and civilization itself. According to the myth, Viracocha rose from either Lake Titicaca or the cave Pacarik Tampu, meaning dawn to be born, in Quechuan, during the Age of Darkness and brought forth light. His first creations were brainless giants made of stone, but they displeased him, and so they were destroyed in a great flood. I expect there to be some lore in the game related to the fifth Umbral Calamity and its effects outside Eorzea, potentially having destroyed the civilization of the giants that ruled over Yogg-Toghrul. Here, the giants survived the flood, and being brainless, I would not expect them to be friendly. Humans were made from smaller stones and then scattered all over the world. While I don't expect all of these attributes to be assigned to the Pelupelu specifically, after all, the native we see speaking to Thancred in the teaser is dark-skinned, nearly his height, and has no mask, and is wearing traditional Andean garb. Ride alpacas and are commerce and agriculturally minded, I'd be absolutely shocked to not see more of pre-conquest Incan mythology and Quechuan culture pervade this region. I hope this has shed some light on what we might be able to expect in 7.0 and the New World.